Greetings, everyone. Hope all of you are having an absolutely fantastic day. We're back again with more Solasta, Crown of the Magister. And this time, I wanted to walk through some tips for those of you who are trying out the game for the first time. When I put out the video about my experience in the first 3 hours, it seemed like there was quite a few of you who were still on the fence and considering picking up the game. So hopefully this video will provide you with some information to make your first playthrough as smooth as possible. First tip, plan out your character. And I think this is actually one of the main strengths of this game, that they make it very, very easy for you to do exactly that. So looking at the barbarian class, you have everything that you get right off the bat listed through here, but then you also have this button at higher levels. And what that allows you to do is see everything that the barbarian is going to get all the way up through level 12 rather. And that'll allow you to make a decision about whether or not this particular warrior is right for you. In addition, unlike most games, you can also see the specialty class or the subclass that you're going to get access to later on. So you can see everything for Path of the Berserker, Path of the Magebane, Path of the Stone. Use this to your advantage. You don't just jump into a class because it looks kind of cool. That might put you in a position where 2 levels later you decide that it sucks and you're right back to square one, re-rolling your character all again. Take the time to go ahead and look through these and figure out long term what is the type of character or 4 characters that I want to have to make sure you're able to start the game with a team that you're ready to take all the way through to the end of the game. Second tip, and we're still in character creation, you're going to get to a point where you have to choose what skills your particular character has. When you're looking at this menu, you might notice a little eye down in the lower right. That's not something you should gloss over. It's going to let you know that while this skill is available for you to select, it's actually not used in the story that's available in the game right now. So it would essentially be dead weight. That means that you should not be picking any of the skills or languages that have this eye in the lower right, unless you're specifically creating a character who you want to hopefully be able to handle the content that will be released for this game at a later time, that I assume will then take this and some of the other features in the game that are not used into account. But if you're creating a character specifically to do well in the game as it stands right now, skills or languages with this marker should be avoided. Tip number 3, and I'm probably going to say this in every D&D type game that I ever make content for, make sure you're paying attention to the log. The log is going to give you a lot of valuable information about what's happening in your fight and what your characters are doing. If you have special talents for a particular character, for example, I have a halfling who re-rolls ones. The log will let you know when this kicks in so that you can see, is this actually benefiting me or is it a dead weight feat that I've basically taken for myself? It'll let you know when enemies are resistant to what you're doing. Now, there are obvious examples of this. You shouldn't be using fire against fire elementals, but it'll tell you in cases that you probably wouldn't know that, hey, this enemy is resistant to piercing damage. So if you really want to do more damage to them, you should be trying to do something else. It's very, very important, especially when you feel like a fight is not going your way. Check out the log, see if maybe it's telling you what you're doing wrong and you just haven't noticed it yet. On this same note, since we're talking about weapon types and what enemies are and are not susceptible to, it is definitely to your advantage to make a balanced party. And that means you want to ensure that you're able to do all sorts of different damage types. So in this playthrough for me, I've got the rogue who's going to do sneak attack damage, and he's got a dagger who does ice damage, a dagger that does poison damage. My sorcerer that I can't click on is all about fire. So essentially a fire mage. My cleric can do a lot of radiant damage. And then, of course, my barbarian is doing melee damage. Unfortunately, it's mostly piercing because I just love the idea of having her with this great big long sword. But it probably would have served me better to have a bludgeoning weapon, and then I can have a full repertoire of the different weapon and damage types to make sure that in any given situation, we have the best damage type for a particular enemy on at least one of the characters. If you put yourself in a situation where you're running out with a whole team of fire mages or ice mages, then, I mean, it could be a lot of fun. By all means, do what you want to do, but it could put you in a position where some of these fights are very, very difficult because they're resistant to a particular type of damage. One of the best ways to help ensure that you have a balanced party that can do different types of damage across all 4 characters is to make sure you're proficient in crafting. And me personally, I feel like crafting is a requirement in this game. It is very, very difficult to get the high level armor and weapons you want to have by just looting them or buying them. Crafting them is definitely the easiest way, and it's going to allow you to craft not only armors and weapons, but fire arrows, poison flasks that you can apply to your melee weapons, scrolls that you can use when you run out of spell slots, potions that you can use so that your cleric or your paladin doesn't have to use healing options. There's just a lot of versatility in the system, and it's going to be of huge benefit to you to make sure, again, all 5 areas are covered by your party. And it's not particularly difficult to make sure that you can do that. For the next tip, I highly recommend that you plan out which of the factions you actually want to invest your time in. It's not long into the game before you unlock the factions. And basically the way the game works is, as you're going out and about and during different quests, you're going to pick up items. And when you hover over these items, it'll have a list of certain factions on it. So it might say Circle of Danatar and the Arcanium, or maybe it'll have 4 different factions. And that list is basically the factions who would be interested in receiving this item. And then once you hand it over to them, you're going to increase your influence with that particular faction. The reason why you want to make sure you plan out which of the factions you actually care about is that each one of them has a completely different inventory that you will get access to as you increase your influence. So for example, if we look at, I think this is the Tower of Knowledge, you'll see, right, so this is the Tower of Knowledge contact. They're all about crafting recipes. Well, that's only useful to you if you have characters who are proficient in crafting. If you don't, then there's no reason to invest in this particular vendor. There are other vendors that specialize in accessories, other vendors that specialize in scrolls. So based upon the type of party that you have, you need to figure out which vendors are going to be most useful to you, and then that's going to inform who you actually want to invest in. I did all the quests in the game, and I feel confident in saying that I did all the content in the game, and there were 2 vendors that I could not max out my favor with. So you can't get them all. Make sure you're diligent about choosing which ones are actually important to you. Next tip, most of the time when you clear out a certain area of all enemies and then you leave, civilization will come to it. And if you come back to that area, there'll be a vendor that you can speak with. It's definitely worth your time. Usually there's going to be a side quest that'll bring you back to the areas that you clear. But even if you decide you're not interested in doing the side quest, it's worth coming back here and checking in with this vendor and seeing if they have anything that you might be interested in. Some of them sell recipes, some of them sell weapons. It's definitely worth at least checking it out to see if there's an upgrade that you can get for your party. And then the very last thing that I'll mention is, as you're traveling around on the world map, the game has your party do a bunch of different things, and one of those things is hunt, because you actually need rations in order to be able to rest. You must have at least 4 units of food in order for you to do a long rest. And there are a few things more frustrating in this game than desperately needing to take a rest, but not having enough food to do it. There's no way for you to manually hunt. And so if you don't have a way to materialize food, it can be a frustrating situation. One way to get around this is to have a character who can cast a spell that allows you to automatically generate food. The ranger has a spell that I believe is called Good Berries, and then the cleric has a spell called Create Food. And what will happen is if you have this spell selected as one of the ones that the cleric has memorized, while you're traveling around on the global map, it will automatically use this spell, create food for you, and you don't have to worry about rations anymore. And that is just, words cannot describe what a relief that definitely is, and a quality of life increase for your party. And those are my tips for the game. I'm absolutely sure I've missed some things that would potentially be of benefit to people trying to play the game. So please, if you've thought of something, leave a comment down below. Let people know that are interested in this game, some things that they could do to make it as simplified for them as possible. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, please leave me a like down below, share this content, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.